Welcome to this presentation of DBU Basics by ProData. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to allow us to present our product. DBU 7.0 software comes with a free 30-day trial. This is a complete version of our software that will expire 30 days after installation. I'd like to show you first off that you need to have the DBU 7.0 library in your library list. We'll use the edit live list command to add that to the library list. We recommend positioning it just below QTemp and for the optimum results. First off, we'd like to take a look at the DBU menu command. DBU menu has the menu options for most of the DBU commands, and to the right of the menu option is the DBU command syntax that you can use from a command line. We'll start with option number 1. This is DBU. You have to put in an object name in here, and what we're going to do is use a file that is shipped with DBU called DBP demo. DBP demo is in the DBU 7.0 library, so we can leave the library name as library list, which is the default. Once we hit enter, we will retrieve the file information for DBP demo. The DBU display screen that comes up when you access a file has a lot of information on it. First off, the file and library, also the page number of the record that we're looking at. In this particular record, there are 3 pages. We're on page 1 of 3. Over to the right, you'll see member and the record format. Also the mode that you're in. DBU is shipped in the default display mode. I'll show you how to change that a little later. Over to the right further, we have the record length, the file access, whether it's arrival or keyed, and the record number that we're currently viewing. As I said, DBU is shipped in a default display mode, and the default record mode is in single record. We can immediately go to multiple record mode by executing a F21 or a Shift F9. That brings us to the multiple record mode. If we press Shift F9 or F21 again, we go back to the single record mode. Single record mode can hold up to 3 columns. So if we do a Shift F1 or an F13, we can have 2 columns. Pressing that key again gives us 3 columns. Now you'll see that we have the complete record, page 1 of 1, record number 1, on a screen in front of us in the single record mode. If we do Shift F1 or F13, again, we go back to a single column. DBU allows you to change records. A very simple way to do that is to type CHG in the control field. The control field has a number of fast path commands that are fully documented in our documentation available at our website. If you have any questions on the fast path commands or the function keys for DBU, make sure you refer to the documentation or contact a member of our technical support team. Once we type in CHG and press enter, you'll notice that the mode has now changed to the change mode. Now we're able to change records. What we'll do is we will change the first 2 fields. First we'll change from 200 to 100, and merely type in 100 and then field exit. And the second field will change from a 3 to a 1, again field exiting. Once we field exited, we can press enter, and at the bottom of the screen we see a message that tells us to press enter to change the record. Once we press enter, the record's now been changed, and we have moved along to record number 2. If we, in the control field, type a T to go back to the top of the file, that would be record number 1, we'll see that those changes have now taken place. DBU allows you to add a record, duplicate a record. You can also delete a record. To delete, we type DLT in the control field and hit enter. Again, the mode has now changed to delete. Once we're in the delete mode, if we press enter, we get a message at the bottom of the screen. Press enter to delete the record. If I press enter, that record has now been deleted. If I type T to go to the top of the file, you'll see that record number 2 is now the top of the file. We'll exit completely out so we can go back into that file to show you how you can retrieve that deleted record. It's not necessary to go out, but I just want to make sure you understood that that record is completely gone now. So if I execute DBU on DBP demo from the command line, and all I have to do is hit enter, we'll retrieve that file information, and you'll notice that we start now at record number 2. That's because we deleted record number 1. In order to retrieve the deleted record in the control field, we would merely type RDR and hit enter. We're presented with a window that allows us to turn RDR on. Now we're looking at record number 1, and it has been designated as a deleted record. If I press F17 as instructed at the bottom of the screen, we'll see all the data that has been retrieved from that deleted record. However, the message at the bottom of the screen tells us that we need to press F17 one more time to reactivate that deleted record. If I do that, we'll see that that record has now been reactivated. We moved along to record number 2. If I hit T to go to the top of the file, we now return to record number 1, which has been reactivated. Another handy feature of DBU is the ability to search. I can use a Shift F3 or an F15 function key to execute a search on this file. And what we'll do is we will search on a field that we know what the results should be, GL amount, and we always have an amount in GL amount, so we'll say GL amount not equal to 0. Now what we're going to do is create a subset of these records by specifying a Y down here. You could also use the replace function of search if we knew a particular field that contained a particular value and we wanted to replace that value. We could designate that here. Anyway, we're just going to do a subset of these records, so we'll go down and say occurrences to process all, because we want to see a subset of these records. Once I hit enter, I get a message at the bottom of the screen that informs me I need to press enter to return, or F16 to perform the search. F21 allows you to submit that search to batch. I'll go into that a little bit later. We're going to do an F16 right now to do the search. So we're building the search, the query's running, and now we're presented with all the files that met our criteria, which of course we knew it to be all records. So we'll go to the bottom of this file, and you'll see we're at record number 52. Going into multiple record mode and paging back up, we'll see all the records met the criteria that we designated in the search. You can also output these results to a file on the iSeries. We'll do a Shift F3 or an F15 again. And this time, we're going to leave the search criteria the same, and we're going to say create a subset no, and we will output the results to a file yes. Occurrences to process will be all. Once I hit enter, I need to name the file. We'll call this file my test in QGPL. Once I hit enter, I'm presented with the message at the bottom of the screen that tells me to execute the F16 or F21 to perform the search. If I do the F16, I build the search, and once the criteria has been met, each record that meets the criteria will be written out to an out file. And we've reached the bottom of the file again, so that means that the search is completed. We can verify that this search completed correctly by typing OPN in the control field. OPN allows us to open a second file on the same screen, so we can verify things. So once we type OPN, I then just have to tell the which file I want to use to open, and we'll type QGPL, the one we just created. Now we'll hit enter and we'll retrieve that file information. Again, it's displayed in a single record mode, and I merely go to multiple record mode by doing my F21, and in the control field, if I want to look at record number 42, which is the one that's on the top screen, I just type in 42 on the control field and hit enter. Immediately I'm taken to records number 42 through 47, and I can verify this information and make sure that it's all there correctly. Using the Shift F10 or the F22 allows me to toggle between these two files. Now with DBU you can open up to 4 files in separate windows in one session. To close this file, I merely type CLO in the control field and confirm the exit. Let's go back to the DBU menu so I can show you a few more things about DBU menu. We'll try the second option, DBU DBR, or the DBU Database Relations option. We'll take option 2 again, and remember you can execute these from a command line using the command syntax. What we're going to do is we're going to look at DBP demo again and look at the database relations. Once I press enter, I'm immediately presented with the database relations for DBP demo. This is also available from the F14 key from within DBU. There's a lot of useful information here. You get the number of records in the file, the last use date, key field information, and select omit criteria. You'll notice the F7 key at the bottom of the screen allows you to print this list, which is very handy. Sometimes people need a hard copy. We'll exit back out so I can show you a little bit more of the DBU menu. We won't be looking at every option, but I just want to cover as much as we can so that you can understand the power of DBU. Option 3 is the DBU FLD command. This time we're going to do it from the command line. We just execute DBU FLD because that's the command syntax right here next to the option, and this time we'll say space and we'll put in DBP demo, DEMO. Once we hit enter, we're presented with the DBU field information. This is also available from within DBU using the F4 key. Details of the field type, whether it's packed, signed, or alphanumeric, the field length, and the byte location in the record. Again, you can use F7 to print this information. Now remember, you can get here from DBU by just using the F4 key. Option 4 is the DBU member command. This is a useful tool. We'll take option 4 this time, and we will put in DBP demo. Once I hit enter, I am displayed the member list for DBP demo. This shows the number of records in each member and the number of deleted records for each member. It also shows the size of the data in each member. It's a lot of useful information here for database administration. Again, you can use F7 to print this list. We'll exit back out to the DBU menu. The rest of the options I'd just like to talk about. Option 5 is the DBU format list. That's record formats. By executing that, you can see the record formats for each record that's contained in the file. Basically, a record format details what the record will look like. Option 6 is DBU applications. We're going to get into DBU applications a little later in this presentation. Option 7 is the DBU query command. This DBU function works just like open query file, but the data is presented in a readable DBU display. Option 8 is the DBU journ command. This DBU function works just like display journ, but display journ can be cryptic in the way it displays the information. DBU puts it in the readable format of DBU. Option 9 is the DBU DTA command, or the DBU data queue command, or data area command. This allows you to manipulate a data area using DBU. Option 10 is the DBU user space command. This also allows you to manipulate a user space using DBU. Option 11 is the DBU data queue command. Option 11 allows you to display a data queue. Data queues cannot be changed due to OS restriction. Option 12 is a new feature of DBU that we're very excited about. It's called DBU RDB. This is the newest plugin for DBU. If you have a need to access databases on a remote server, you need to talk to your customer service representative about DBU RDB. It gives you a very easy way to access databases on a remote server, and that would be a non-System I iSeries AS400 server. You might say that with something that has this much power that you would need some authority to control it. Well, DBU builds that authority into our software. We'll exit out of the DBU menu, and now we're going to execute a command called DBU AUT, the first three letters of authority. Once I hit enter, I am presented with the DBU user authority defaults screen. DBU is shipped with star public. Any profile that is not defined in the DBU user authority defaults will use star public. What we're going to do right now is use option 6 to duplicate star public, and we'll create a profile that allows a lot of activity, and then what we'll do is we'll lock down star public. Anyway, we're going to take option 6, and option 6 we're going to put in QPGMR. QPGMR is a profile we have on our system, and a lot of people use it as a group profile. DBU authority does obey group profile authorities. Allowable modes. This is what people are allowed to do using DBU. You'll notice that we ship the software with Ys in all of the parameters here. I'll show you in a little bit how we're going to lock down star public and just allow QPGMR to add, change, delete, and display. Now there's a lot of parameters on these 6 screens. Oh, by the way, there are 6 screens to the DBU user authority defaults. We won't be going into each and every one, and they are documented in our documentation, and of course our technical support team is available to answer any questions you might have about the parameters of DBU authority. Just below the allowable modes, change log. This refers to the ability of DBU to write a spool file out for any adds, changes, or deletes done using DBU. You can designate a default out queue for this to go to and a library. This parameter is shipped as a no, but you can change that to a Y to spool out a report each time DBU is exited that details any adds, changes, or deletes. You can also copy the output log to a database file, and you can print only the change fields or all the fields. Now, if you need a more extensive auditing tool, what we do have is the DBU Audit Journal plugin. The DBU Audit Journal plugin has been very useful for our customers that have SOX requirements or need a more robust auditing procedure. DBU Audit Journal plugin uses the IBM journal configuration, and it doesn't journal files on your system. We just write journal entries to a journal receiver that details all the adds, changes, and deletes, and we can even tell you when someone has viewed a record using DBU. If you have auditing requirements, you really need to look at the DBU Audit Journal plugin. Used in conjunction with DBU RDB, you can track changes on remote databases that have used DBU RDB to make those changes. We're going to go to the second screen now, and this is the initial setup defaults. I told you earlier how the mode was display, and that is detailed at the very first line there. Columns are 1, the format is a single record, and the size is 132. This session is made for an 80-column session, so even though it's defaulted to 132, it will obey the session rules. There's a lot more on this screen, and as I said, we're always available to answer questions, but due to time constraints, we'd like to move along to the third screen. Here we have a lot of information about the default settings for users that you might want to look into to ensure that you have DBU authority set up the way you want it. The fourth screen talks about the search and replace defaults. Now, when we talked about F21 about the search, you'll see there's a whole section here devoted to how that submit to batch will work. You can designate a job queue and an output queue for the submit to batch. We'll page down to the fifth screen, and this screen controls those windows we looked at when you have multiple files open in DBU. There's more information on this in our documentation. Page 6 deals with the function keys. You have the ability to designate which function key you would like to perform the action. You merely type the function key that you want to perform the action to the left of the action. That would be on the right of the equal sign. Anything that you type in there will then function the way that you have designated it to. We're going to go hit enter right now, and you'll notice that we get a message that says verify and press enter to update at the bottom of the screen. Once we do that, we now have a profile called QPGMR that's able to do lots of things. If I take option 1 on public and change add, change, and delete to no, once I hit enter, again I'm presented with the message that tells me to verify and press enter. We go back to the DBU user authority defaults, and we can now see that star public can only display records. They're not allowed to add, change, or delete. However, QProgrammer can do any of the modes of DBU. We think DBU authority is a very powerful part of DBU. Of course, DBU does obey the object level authority on your system already. If a user is not authorized to a file, DBU will not allow them to even display the file. Now we're going to go back out to a command line, and what I'd like to show you is how to build a DBU application. DBU applications can be used over and over. You can put them on a menu for your users to use. A lot of our customers find that to be a very useful tool. All we have to do is DBU the file that we want to build the application over. And we're going to do it over that file we just looked at, DBP demo. Once I hit enter, we're presented with the information. Using the F4 key, the list fields key, I can go into DBU, and let's say we want the general ledger account number to be selected. We would also like to display that only. We wouldn't want someone to be changing our general ledger account numbers. But we'll page down and we'll go to the general ledger amount number, and we'll select that, because that's what we want to use this for, is for someone to verify the general ledger account number and input the general ledger amount number. If I hit enter, I am presented with just those two fields. Once I type CHG in the control field and hit enter, I am now in the change mode. And if I tab back and forth, you'll notice that I can only change that GL amount number. And in fact, we'll change that to 524.20. Our customer spent $1. Once I hit enter, I get a message at the bottom of the screen that tells me to enter to change the record. Once I do that, we move along to record number 2. If I page back up, we'll see that record number 1 has been changed. Now, if I say, you know, I like this and I really want to build an application this way, I know this is very simple. Applications can be a lot more sophisticated, but in the interest of time, we're just going to type APP to make an application out of this. Once I hit enter, I'll be presented with the DBU applications list screen. Once we get the DBU applications list screen up, you'll notice at the bottom that we have an F6 key that allows us to create or replace the application. If I press F6 and call this my test app, and we'll put this in the DBU 7.0 library, the description just wants to be something that designate what the application does. Authority, we're going to say star all. However, you can get very particular here. You can use star change, star all, star use, which would mean the person that was using the application could only use it. You can even do a star exclude, and then using F14 down here at the bottom, you can designate by profile who you want to be able to use this DBU application. Once I hit enter, the information that we had on the screen that we designed is now being saved in a user space and will be stored in the library I designated as DBU 7.0. Then when we come back to the DBU application screen, we will see that my test app is now part of the list. Now we'll need to do an F3 to get all the way back to DBU, and then another F3 to get back to a command line. Now I can use DBU APP or option 6 off the DBU menu, and then put in the DBU application name, which was my test app. Once I hit enter, I retrieve the file exactly the way that I built it, with only 2 fields available, and only one of them can be changed, and we are in the change mode. We'll exit all the way back out again. And now I'd like to talk a little bit about another interesting part we have of DBU software. It's called DBU GUI. That stands for Graphical User Interface. If I take you to my desktop, we're going to jump right to my desktop, you'll notice I have a blue paw print on my desktop. And if you check the box in your installation for DBU GUI, and we recommend that you do, also check the one for OpsNav plugin, because there is a plugin that you can use for the iSeries or Operations Navigator for client access. So anyway, we're going to open up DBU GUI. DBU GUI uses the typical IBM client-server configuration. Right now, we've contacted our iSeries, and it's asking us for an object to open up. So we're going to try DBP demo again, and we'll click OK. Now it's going to pull that file information into a graphical user interface. Keep in mind, GUI uses no interactive CPU. This is all batch processing that it's using on your iSeries. And once it contacts the iSeries, grabs the file information, you're presented with the GUI display that details the same information that we looked at using the green screen. And again, it'll use the DBU defaults, which is the single record mode. I can quickly change to a multiple record mode by going up to Format and choosing Multiple. I can go to a change mode by going up to Mode and click Edit. All the functionality of DBU is available using DBU GUI. We're very excited about DBU GUI. We think that in today's world, with workload processing being at a premium, a lot of companies want to move their green screen users to a batch environment. The other interesting thing about DBU GUI is that you can access DBU applications. We'll exit the file that we just looked at, and by right-clicking on my system name, I can go down and select DBU applications. Once I highlight that application we just built, I can then click on the select button, and it'll bring up that application exactly the way that we built it. We can change one field and one field only. We'll go in and change that field just so that we can see that we can change that. We're going to change it back to 523.20, and once we field exit out of there and we hit enter, the update button at the bottom becomes active. We must click update, and then that record has now been updated. If I page back up, we'll see that record number 1 has now been changed back to 523.20. Another interesting feature of DBU GUI is that you can create a desktop icon for this application, so that if you just had a certain job you needed a user to do, you could create a desktop icon for that job. You could actually have several desktop icons of different applications. So now we're going to exit out of this application, and we're going to exit completely out of DBU GUI, and now we've got a desktop application over here that we just created. So we'll open that up, and what that'll do is bring up DBU GUI in exactly the format that we described in our DBU application. I'd like to thank you again for taking the time to allow us to present what we believe to be the best database tool on the market today. Again, thank you.